Welcome to Getting Through, cold calling techniques to get your foot in the door with Stephen Schiffman. This is a program that's going to change the way you think about sales and the way you sell. In these 90 minutes, Steve Schiffman will show you sales techniques that have made him America's #1 corporate sales trainer. In sales seminars for leading companies like IBM, AT&T, Mobilecom, U.S. Healthcare, and the Equitable Life Assurance, Steve Schiffman has helped America's top salespeople dramatically improve their sales skills and increase their income. His best-selling book, Cold Calling Techniques That Really Work, has brought these same proven methods to thousands more in every walk of business life. Now it's your turn. Any good salesperson will tell you that you can't be successful in sales unless you can get in the door. That's what Getting Through is all about. Steve Schiffman will show you how to secure appointments, which lead to prospects, and then how to turn those prospects into sales. Best of all, these methods utilize the most efficient sales tool ever devised, the telephone. You're about to discover cold calling techniques that will make your telephone your #1 business ally. You'll learn a new approach to the 4 steps of the sales process and the 4 Ps that make the process successful. You'll learn how to turn objections into positive responses, how to get through corporate layers to the right person, how to make sure that your calls are returned, even how to get through with a voicemail message. So let's get started. Here's America's top corporate sales trainer, the president of DEI Management, Steve Schiffman.
This tape is designed to help you make appointments, and I'll explain that later as we get more involved in the process. But I first want to tell you something about what I do. Every single day that I'm not in front of a group, I pick up the phone and I make a cold call. Now, we're going to talk later about what a cold call is. But every single day, I pick up the phone and I make 15 cold calls. Every single day. Every time I make 15 cold calls, I in fact get through to 7 people. Every time I get through to 7 people, I set up 1 appointment. Which means at the end of the week, because I do that 5 days a week, I will have 5 brand new appointments. That is, I will see 5 people that I haven't spoken to before. Now, later in this tape, we're going to talk about what that means and how to define that. But for the moment, just so we kind of understand each other, I do what you do. That is, I sell. Although I have a company and although I've written a number of books, I sell each and every day. And for every 5 people I see, that is, for every 5 appointments I go on, I in fact will make 1 sale. Which means at the end of the year, I will have brought in 50 new accounts to my company. Now, I have no idea, as you listen to this tape, what that means to you, whether 50 new accounts is a lot or a little. It really doesn't matter. In fact, if you really thought about it, the concept of making appointments and what you start to realize is really crucial to every single sale. If we cannot get an appointment, it doesn't really matter what we want to sell, who we want to sell to, or how much it costs, or anything else. I want you to think for a moment about selling. There are 4 steps to the sales process. If you just think about it, you'll understand. Step 1 is opening and qualifying. Step 2 is getting information. Step 3 is presenting to close is the way I like to phrase it. And finally, the last step is the closing step. The objective of the first step is what? What do you think it is? When I ask that question in seminars, most people say, well, Steve, the objective of the first step is to qualify, get to meet somebody, talk to somebody, open up, start to find out the needs of the individual. Is it really? Or is the objective of the first step of the sales call really to get to the second step? If there are 4 steps, the objective of the first step has to be to get to the second step. If the objective of the second step is to get to the third step, the objective of the third step is to get to the 4th step, which happens to be closing. What we're going to look at today is how do we start that beginning process by getting that appointment. Because if you and I cannot get an appointment, we're not going to be successful at the process. The first thing I'd like you to consider is that there are 4 major areas that you and I are concerned with as salespeople. They are prospecting, presentation skills, product knowledge, and finally, professional and personal development. Things you do to improve yourself. Let's just take a look at those for a second, and let's talk about those. How would you rate these 4 things in priority? When I talk to salespeople, what I usually find is that they have mixed reactions as to how to rank those 4 major areas of concerns to sales representatives. Some tell me that, Steve, the only thing that matters is prospecting. Other people say to me, Steve, you've got to understand your product. Some say you've got to get that presentation well, and others say no, 99% of your time has to be in honing your skills, that is, professional and personal development motivation, because without being motivated, you can't succeed. Well, let me tell you what it is. Because we've done some surveys. We've trained about 250,000 salespeople. We've done an awful lot of work with selling. And we've learned certain things about selling that'll help you. First of all, prospecting, that first P that we wanted to consider, prospecting, accounts for 45% of the success of the average salesperson in the United States today. Presentation skills, that is the ability to make the presentation, is about 20%. Product knowledge, product malleability, how to use the product more effectively and really make it work for your customer, is again about 20%. And finally, the last 15% is in professional and personal development, things you do to improve yourself, books, tapes, seminars, workshops. So when you really look at it, what you start to realize is that 65% of your sale is in finding people and telling them what you do. The more people you're going to see, the better off you're going to be. But watch now, because you're already thinking that sales is just a numbers game. It's not a numbers game by itself. It's improving your skills. That is, it's not just calling everybody and saying, do you want to buy my product or service? Because you know something, that's not going to do it for you. What you have to learn is the skill to get the appointment. And so what we're going to talk about today is how do you improve your odds. Now, I want to show you something. Another important concept. 20 calls, 5 appointments equal 1 sale. Simple formula, and one that you can easily remember. 20, 5, and 1. What that says to you is, for every 20 calls you complete, you will in fact, or should get, 5 appointments. Out of every 5 appointments, you should be able to make 1 sale. 25 and 1. Now that's a pretty good ratio, and I kind of like that ratio. How many no's you see right there? Now let's take a look at that again. 25 and 1. You could say 15. At least most people see it that way. In reality, it's 19 no's. You've got 19 no's in order to make that 1 sale. What's important about that? Well, we do a lot of work with new life insurance agents, and if you're new to the life insurance industry, you'll understand this. When we start a new life insurance agent out, we give them a graph that has 250 little boxes in it. What we tell them is very simple. Every single day that they talk to someone about life insurance, and that person says, no, I'm not interested in life insurance, we want them to put an X in the box. Every single time someone says no to them, they put an X in the box. And when they get 250 X's, in other words, 250 people have said no to them, we will give them $1,000. Now just listen to that again. Every single time that they talk to someone about life insurance and that person says no, they put an X in the box. When they get 250 no's, we give them $1,000. Now why do you think we can do that? Well, if you follow the math that we've been working with, what you suddenly realize is that in order to get 250 no's, which they will get yeses. In fact, they will get over $10,000 in yeses, even though they've gotten 250 no's. What I want you to remember throughout this tape is to count the no's. Don't count the yeses. Every single time someone says to you, no, I'm not interested in buying. No, I don't want to buy it. No, I'm not interested in talking to you. They're actually getting you closer to a yes. Now just think about that. I've trained a lot of salespeople. I meet salespeople all the time. When I meet someone who says to me, Steve, I've had a great week last week. I got no no's. I can tell you 2 things about that person. Either they got fired or on vacation. That's all it can be. In sales, it's impossible. It's impossible for you to get no no's during the week. If you're not getting no's, you're probably not talking to enough people. And we're going to take a look at that now. I'll show you something else. It takes me about 8 weeks for the time I first sit down and talk to you until I actually make a sale. 8 weeks. Now watch. Let's say, for argument's sake, this was the 1st of the month. Therefore, in order for me to have a sale, I know that it would be 8 weeks from now. I can predict it. I know that it won't be month 1 or 2. It'll be the beginning of month 3. In other words, 8 weeks from now. Why is that important for you to know? Because you need to know that for yourself also. What we start to realize is that we can predict our success now depending upon how long our sales cycle is. If your sales cycle is 16 weeks, then you need 16 weeks. If you have no appointments today, then 16 weeks from now, you will have no business. That's an important concept right now. And I'm starting to introduce this to you early because I want you to start thinking about how do you evaluate your success as a sales representative. For example, if I were to take your appointment book right now, how many appointments would I see? If you say to me you're not sure, that's not a good answer, because I'm going to show you something else, and I'm going to come back on this in a second. What I'm going to show you is very simple, that you can evaluate your success the same way you can evaluate a doctor or a dentist's success, by looking at their appointment book. When you call the doctor's office and you ask to see the doctor, the first thing the nurse says to you is when they have a free schedule. Sometimes that's not for weeks. Well, it doesn't take much head scratching to realize that if they have no free appointments for several weeks, they're making some money. Well, isn't that the same with you? Every single appointment you go on produces income. Well, now you're going to say to me, Steve, that's not really true. Well, that is true. You see, go back to our concept that we just talked about, the 250 no's. I'm going to give you $1,000 for 250 no's. That means you're making $4 each time you get a no. In fact, you should be able to figure that out. Because what you're starting to realize is that every single time you get a no, you're getting closer to a yes, but you actually get paid for those no's. But now watch, because this is going to change the way you think about selling. What I'm going to suggest to you is that every single time you make a sale, you actually lose 5 prospects. Now, you're scratching your head right now, and you're saying to me, well, that doesn't really sound right. But I want you to think about this for a second. Suppose I said to you that I wanted you to go see 100% of your prospects, and let's say that's 100. Let's make it easy. So now we're going to see 100%, which is 100 of our prospects. How many sales will you make? Well, you might say to me, you'll make 10 sales. You might 20. You might even say you make 50. Doesn't matter to me. Whatever number you want. But it definitely won't be 100, will it? Of course not. We don't do 100% selling. Well, that means that every time you make a sale, you lose something on the downside. So, for example, if you say to me, well, Steve, I make 10% of all my sales, that means 90% of them don't happen. If you say 50% do, then 50% don't happen. Which means, if you're making 10% of your sales, 9 drop off in the process of getting 1 sale. Which means you're continuously losing prospects. Now, you know that. I know you know that. But you've never thought about it that way before. Well, you have to start to think about it that way. Because how do you get a continuous supply of prospects? You see, the key to successful selling is managing the prospects. It's not managing the sales effort. You know that part. Now, wait a second. That means you have to replace those prospects. How do you do that? Let me give you an example. Simple example. As you and I conduct this workshop together, I have a little glass of water here. Eventually, I actually will drink this water, and I'll finish it. Now, of course, I've got to get more water. What I'm going to do is stop the tape, go out to the water fountain, and get some more water. Well, that's a real down. It's going to be a long distance. That's the valley that you have when you run out of prospects. What you have to do is have a continuous supply, just like I have a pitcher of water here. Well, eventually I run out of that. Eventually I have to go out and get more water. And so what I just realized is, ideally, to make this program work, I should have a hose right here. And if I had a hose, I'd never run out of water. But what's your hose as a salesperson? Your hose as a salesperson is your appointments. It's not your prospects. Your prospects give you the sales. It's your appointments that give you the prospects. If you have no appointments today, what's your chances of getting a new prospect today? It's non-existent. You should be monitoring the number of appointments that you have at any given day, and you should be maintaining a base of prospects every single day that are equal, and that will eliminate that up and down, peaks and valleys, highs and lows sales cycle that every salesperson in the United States goes through. The reality is that appointments equals prospects. Prospects equals sales. Now, I'll give you a definition later of a prospect. I'll get to that. And you can define it a number of different ways. But the one thing I know is you have nothing if you don't have an appointment. Appointments give you prospects, prospects give you sales. And the only way that you know you have a real appointment is that you have a real date that goes with that. Without the real date, it doesn't really matter. The person says, sure, stop over. Come on, see me. That's not real. We're talking about real dates, real appointments. In my office, if you worked for us, you would have 21 first appointments scheduled for the next 3 weeks. What you realize is it's only one new appointment every single day. It's not that much. Do you have that in your book? If you do, that's great. Then you're on top. If not, maybe you want to rethink that a little bit. Maybe you want to say to yourself, maybe I have to increase my appointments. Now, what's a prospect? Well, you see, everybody has definitions of prospects. I have a very simple definition of a prospect. My definition of prospect is it's someone who's going to play ball with you. Now, what does that mean? If I call you up and get an appointment with you and you're not there, I don't have a prospect. If I call you up and you say, yeah, come on over, and then you say, look, I'm really not interested, I don't have a prospect because I need to continue the cycle. Remember, we talked about that earlier. There are 4 steps, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you and I have to have a relationship, an honest, trusting relationship, whereby I can play ball with you and you're going to play ball with me. In fact, what you're going to learn from me is that selling is a dialogue between 2 people who agree to continue. Doesn't necessarily mean everybody's going to buy. And your best prospects, obviously, are the ones that buy, but doesn't mean that the only people you see are buyers. You see a lot of people all the time.
You've heard new ways to approach the sales process. What's the objective of each of the 4 steps? To get to the next step, and finally to closing. What's the one thing that's going to make your sales efforts consistently successful? Appointments. What are the cold calling numbers to remember? 20, 5, and 1. 20 calls, 5 appointments, 1 sale. And what is the most important number in your sales process to keep track of? The 19 no's that will lead to yes. Now it's time to take some important steps. We'll start by exploring the sales cycle. Steve will examine the pros and cons of some common methods of finding prospects. Then he'll introduce you to the cold calling techniques that spell success.
There are 3 places that you can be in the sales cycle. And if you visualize it this way, it's very simple. Obviously, over to the end, you have those people who close, and those are, in fact, your accounts, your customers, your clients. That's on the close. All the way to the other side are candidates, suspects, and leads. Now, you can call that anything you want. It really doesn't matter to me what you want to call it. Candidates, suspects, and leads are those people out there that you want to sell to. Now, let me give you an example. Suppose I found out that there's the ABC company in Milwaukee, and I decide that I want to go ahead and have that company as a client of mine. Just because I've said that, does that make them a prospect? Or are they a lead, a candidate, or a suspect? Suppose I know everything about that company. Suppose I know who the CFO is or the CEO is. I know all their buying patterns. I know how many people they employ. I know everything about that company. Are they a prospect for me? Well, you might say they are, but watch. Suppose I call up that CEO and he says, no, don't see me. Call the CFO and he says, no, don't come to me. Suppose I call the buyer and he says, no, don't come to me. What do I have? I have nothing. In other words, what I need to do is to get in front of that person and have a dialogue, have a conversation. Hopefully we'll lead to someplace. Candidate, suspect, and lead are on the outside. The middle group, those are the people that you're presently working with. Those are your prospects. Prospects, by definition, are someone who will go on the sales track with you. Those people are in the middle. That's the base that you want to maintain. And then, of course, you have your clients and your accounts on the other side. Our objective today is to take those candidates, suspects, and leads and move them into the process. And we're going to do that with cold calling. Let's talk about prospecting. Let's talk about how we find those people to call, because it's important that we maintain a base of prospects, a base of candidates, suspects, and leads to turn into prospects. Number 1, most effective thing, and you know this, is word of mouth. The single most effective thing that you can do to find people is tell people what you do. The reason is every single person that you meet knows an additional 250 people. Now, that's crucial for you to know. Everybody you know knows an additional 250 people. But I meet so many people. I meet so many people. And I say, what do you do? And they say, I'm in sales. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. say what you do. If you ask me what I did, I said, well, I'm president of DEI Management Group. We're a sales training firm, and I will tell you that. I want you to begin to tell people what you do. Just don't say I'm in sales. That means nothing. And in fact, it doesn't help you promote what it is you do. Every single time you meet somebody, you come into contact with an additional 250 people. Number two. Second thing you can do is through the mail. We did a program a number of months ago, and we interviewed about 500 salespeople. We said to them very simply, how effective is the mail? Now, of course, everybody has their own stories about the mail working or not working. But in this case, this is what we found out. It's interesting to note. 89% to a high of 91% of the salespeople that we interviewed said the mail never got through to the person that they addressed it to. That means when they called up and they said, hi, did you get my letter? The person said, no, I didn't get the letter. Probably the secretary or the person just forgot about the letter and never got them because he kind of ripped it up or he saw it, he didn't remember it. If you're going to use the mail, then you have to follow up. A lot of salespeople say to me, Steve, I beat that system. I mail out 10,000 letters on Monday and I follow up by calling everybody by Thursday. Well, you know that's impossible.
Okay. I'm stopping the tape now. I think you've got a taste for this guy. He's really good. Steve Schiffman. If you're ever interested in ordering his tapes, I'm sure he's on Amazon or somewhere on the internet. Alright, I'm closing the tape out now, and happy selling.